It's that time again. Shabbat shalom, everybody. My favorite time of the week. You know, after you put in that 6-day work week, as we're commanded, fourth commandment, 6 days we're to labor, and of course we're to rest on the Sabbath. So happy to be here. Hopefully you guys are too. All praises to our Father in heaven, is to his Son Yahushua HaMashiach, who is our high priest and our atoning sacrifice, and of course the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. All right, so we're talking about the firmament tonight. And as I was telling my group beforehand, if you have not yet come to our Tuck, the Unexpected Cosmology community meetup, I call it the Kingdom Verse, please come by. We meet 2 hours before I go live here on YouTube and X and Facebook and wherever else you might be watching me, podcasts, whatever. And I was telling them one thing or another. Now I can't remember. Oh yeah, the firmament. Last week I gave a presentation on the firmament. Of course, I'm going through a line by line study of the Bible, specifically the first 5 books, and it's been a couple months going through it. Usually, when I give a presentation, I'll have like 70, maybe 100 pages of notes. I don't really know. I'll get through 50 of them, maybe 60. And then I'll just chuck the rest. I don't usually often finish them, and I just move on to the next subject. Last week, I'm like, that's not going to happen. That's not the case. I'm going to finish this. So I want everybody to know one of the, I could be wrong about many things. In fact, nobody disproves me more than myself. Like, I'm constantly changing my view. And when I do change my view, it is to take the Bible itself more literally, because I'm like, oh, that makes sense. You know, you get these pieces connect together that just everything gives you better peripheral vision. And one of the things I try to model on here at the Unexpected Cosmology, where X marks the spot in unexpected, is, take, 10 books, 20 books, 30 books of these ancient books and show that they all say the same thing. They all agree, right? And of course, we've seen that with the rakia, the firmament. And the ancients clearly believed that there was a solid dome over us. And I believe the ancients over the modern day educational system, the media, the university, and so on and so forth. All right. So last week, I gave a lot of different scriptural passages on the firmament. If you are showing up tonight and you're like, I'm disappointed, Noel, you didn't quote much from the Bible, well, you need to just tune in last week and you'll see that. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different tonight. Hopefully YouTube won't take me down. If they do, I will try to pay attention to what was the naughty video that I showed, and maybe I can edit it out and do a shorter clip and put it back up on the tube, the wide tube. Before I do get into this tonight, so be showing you a lot of movie clips and stuff, right? And this is, a family community. I will be showing you some clips from, say, Spaceballs, when when we do get there. If you don't want your children listening into that, just be sure to hit the volume button until the clip is over. But I'm doing it to show a lot of Hollywood propaganda tonight, as well as some other esotericism. Now, before I get into this all tonight, I do, want to talk about finances. I am so grateful for everybody who has been supporting this ministry financially, even in your prayers. And I think everybody's kind of starting to come to terms now that this is much bigger than just me. We are becoming a ministry that is becoming so focused on the Paleo Hebrew, and that is coming through Pamela. Pamela is doing some incredible things that I want to support every single month through your donations that keep us afloat. Before I feed my family, and we're living month by month. I want everybody to know that we are living literally month by month. I mean, if we go over our budget, we take that and it goes into the ministry. It goes to somebody. It goes to feed somebody. All right. So we are literally depending on y'all month by month. The first thing we do is we send out of the paycheck is we cut it out and send it to Rebecca to make sure she is fed, she is taken care of. She still has needs. I mean, she's a woman with needs, and if you guys ever want to check up on her from time to time, make sure she's taken care of. and the other is Pamela. Unfortunately, last month we did not make the goal. It was the first month where I don't think we broke even on our budget since we have been in the full-time ministry. It was the first month where it did not happen. And then, I had to go to my community this week and say, you know what? I'm sorry to tell you guys, Pamela's not going to be eating this month. And I'm so grateful for the outpouring of support from those in the community who went to Pamela privately and be like, let me try to contribute to help take care of you. And that's really what this should be. This should be a community effort. The burden of the world was on me this week. I mean, it was a very tough week. And I'm just like, man, I just want to take care of all these people. I want to provide for all these people and I can't do it. And it really should be a community effort. So thank you everybody who is just stepping up and going, I so believe in this paleo coming out. Very soon we're going to have a commercial for you guys. I'll be playing it before my videos and showing, hopefully giving you guys a taste of why this paleo is so important. Guys, this has been hidden from us for a couple thousand years. And this is an opening up of the books. Like, this should excite everybody. Like, yes, the very language that David wrote and Moses wrote and, so on and so forth, the prophets. This is the paleo. This is the not the Hebrew that we see on Bible Hub or that's in the Masoretic that's in our like the original language of heaven that it talks about. This is coming to the forefront again, and I'm so excited to be a part of it. And thank you all for partnering with us to be able to turn out these books. And we hope to be doing this for many more years. All right. So you might be asking yourself, why is there a picture of a Nazi on your video screen right now? No, I'm not the Nazi, but this guy is Wernher von Braun. And, Operation Paperclip it's not even conspiratorial at this point. Back home in Charleston, I'm in Florida right now. Back home in Charleston, I have this thick book on my bookshelf, Operation Paperclip. And it's just mainstream knowledge now that, the guy who built the V2 rockets he was literally just massacring, murdering maybe, however we want to define this in war, but he's massacring the British, sending them over and bombing them with the V2 rockets. The U.S. nabs this guy, and not only they nab the guy, so if you go to like Wikipedia, still the official narrative is that Wernher von Braun is the guy that they kind of drag out there as the main guy, and I think they have to, because Walt Disney grabbed this guy. And it's pretty shocking, the Disneyland episodes from the 50s where they're just hauling this guy. They're not telling you that he's a Nazi or that he came from Germany. If they had, it would be, the space program would have a very different, I think, effect. But they took the guy who designed these V2 rockets and said, okay, how about, how do you feel about faking the moon landing? And he's like, in his best German accent, he's like, all right, I can do that. So Operation Paperclip was a secret U.S. intelligence program. I'm pulling this from Wikipedia, by the way, that brought over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians to the United States after World War II. And they put here the notable figures: Wernher von Braun, who became the director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, and he was a key figure in Operation Paperclip. And you can, go look at pictures of him in the control room. He's all intense. Are they going to make it back? The astronauts, all that kind of stuff. But this is what I want to start on tonight, from where we left off. On his tombstone, you can see there Wernher von Braun. He's buried in Alabama, I believe. I've passed it many times on the highway there. I've never been to his grave. I've always wanted to. And you can see he died in 1977, the year of Star Wars of all years. And he writes there Psalm 19:1. Well, what does Psalm 19:1 says? What does it say? The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Psalm 19:1. So, is that a confession, right? Is he like, yeah, it was all top secret all these years. I was captive of the United States. I was a free man in Germany. I was captive here, brought over, and part of this whole space program, and it's all a lie. Was he declaring that there? Psalm 19:1. Well, I want to play this. I'm going to be talking about Disney a lot tonight. And as I mentioned, that Wernher von Braun, you can look him up. I'm not going to play him tonight. You can look at Disneyland episodes from the 50s. where Werner von Braun's coming on and he's talking about how they're going to fly to Mars and all this kind of stuff, which is a joke, right? It only makes sense. If we landed on the moon in 69, everyone thought, oh, by the 1990s, we'll be on Mars. No problemo, right? Well, I want to play you this clip, and hopefully I can find it for you guys. Hopefully I won't have any problems here. You can see all the clips I'll have to play for you guys tonight. Please don't play. Okay. Nope, that's not it. Here it is. Let's see if I can magnify this for you guys. Okay. And this came out in the 1950s. You can see here, season 4, episode 1 of Disneyland, Mars and Beyond, 1957. In fact, I think von Braun was in this episode. And this is some of the most shocking propaganda that I've ever seen. And this actually plays in the millennial kingdom as well. I'll have a few comments on this. And I want you to pay attention to what you see, but also what you don't see. And also how they're steering the conversation, into favor of the space age. Here we go. Actually, that's not where I wanted you to be at all. let me get back here. Here we go. And of course, now it's going to give problems. Hopefully, I'm not going to have problems like this all night. Come on. It's not where I wanted to be. Come on, YouTube. Like YouTube's being difficult with me right now. Let's go back to the analogy of starting out with Plato's cave, where they just take a dump on Plato's cave, and then they take a dump on the biblical prophets, very passive aggressively in some ways. So I just want to point out there that they straight up start with kind of Plato's cave, but they purposely kind of take a dump on it. Now, this was kind of interesting as I was thinking about. Look at this again. Notice how the stars are going around and they're going in the water. And again, they're making this whole thing out to be just totally, excuse my language, but totally dumbass, right? Anyone who would believe this is an idiot. But there's something about this that is kind of very telling, is that I am of the opinion myself that the stars are actually in water. And they're showing, they don't show water above. They show water below. They show the stars going through the water. They show the smoke going up, right? Because they're a ball of light and they're getting extinguished. And this is how stupid people really were. But again, I want you to pay attention to what you do not see here. Did anybody in class, does anybody see what they're not? Okay, no sound. Nobody. So nobody's hearing me at all right now. Let me just check here. If you guys can hear me, yeah, it says I'm talking. Nobody hears me right now. No sound, no sound, no sound. Nobody. Nope, nope. Hello? Huh. Okay, you hear me. Okay, well, that's because I'm not playing the video, guys. So you don't hear any sound on the video itself is what you're telling me. Okay. You don't hear the video. All right, well, that's fine. So if you don't hear the video right now, I'll just have to narrate this for you. Okay, you don't hear the video. It's a silent movie, guys. So what they're telling you right now is how they remember a couple weeks ago when I talked about the matrix and are we in a simulation theory, and I said that I didn't like that the term of simulation theory. um, that I like the idea more of a dream. Are we in the thank you guys for the funny comments as I'm having tech issues here. Are we in the dream of Yah? Like, to be is to be perceived. And one of the passages that came up was this idea that what's incredible about this world, even though it's a material illusion, is that we have seasons, and that the seasons themselves and the planting season and the harvest is all a part of the design of the security blanket that Yah shows us, that he is in control and that all things are in order. And what they're telling us here in this video is that they're inventing these constellations in order to create a false reality. Like, that's what Disney's telling you here. All the idea of the two guys in the cave, and then they're looking at the stars, and it's all this false reality that they're telling you. All right, let's keep looking at it. I'm sorry you guys can't hear it. I can hear it just fine. That was Drake with the dragon, by the way. The 1/3 of the stars that fell with the dragon. Wizard Tower of Babel. There you go. I put the subtitles on for you guys. See, there you see the pillars of the earth. So then now they're going to mock it. They're going to say we're on elephants in a big moving trail. But again, what do you guys not see here? This is hard for me because I can hear the volume just fine. I'm talking over it. What do you not see? There's no firmament. Now, this right here is the closest we get to the firmament. That is Nut or Nuet, the Egyptian goddess who is the firmament. But again, they don't want to tell you about the firmament in here. They want to, they want to just detract. They don't want this audience in 1957 was still very biblically literate. Like they were reading the King James Bible. They didn't have all these other translations at the time. They might have had a few. And so you use the word firmament, or you show an ancient idea of what the firmament was, people would be like, what? They wanted to totally detract from that. And it's going to make it that much more um, contemptuous when we actually see what Disney does through all their movies. So, all right. So I'm fast forwarding here because you can't hear this. So this here is this is the most shocking part of all, because they're like, okay, so we figured out, and they don't say Hypatia, but or Hypatia, but if you saw my video on that, she was the one that brought out the Copernican universe. And so then they talk here about 1,000 years filled with the millennial kingdom. Here we are in the millennial kingdom. Only you guys can hear the voice and the music too. It's so creepy. But they're telling you that basically during this 1,000 years, from really 500 to 1500, that people were stupid. They believed only in magic, and which is funny coming from Disney too, right? The Magic Kingdom, the really big on magic. So apparently they've changed their position on what is evil. But apparently the Dark Ages were an evil time when they were very anti-science. And then there's your Copernicus right there. You see, he's blowing the trumpet of truth. All right, we can end that right there. Bummer, you guys can't hear the sound tonight. Let's see if I can get rid of this. All right. So there's that right there. And then we come to this famous clip. And the reason I wanted to show you that first was because, man, I have so many here to show you. Okay. You guys all know this. You can't hear this, but this should all take you back to your childhood watching those VHS tapes. And what do we see happening right here? Tower of Babel. And come on, Tinkerbell. Come on, there she is. Boom, there it is, the firmament right there. It finally struck me because I had seen that propaganda video so many times. I'm like, they never once brought up the firmament. And then in every single Disney movie for decades, they show you the firmament over the dome above us and the Tower of Babel rising above it, thereby declaring what they're really about. All right, so let's talk about the firmament and the bones of heaven for a moment. And this comes from, well, we see a few passages here. It is Exodus chapter 24. I said I wasn't going to give a lot of scripture tonight, but that apparently is not true because I have a few here. Now, we all know that the Ten Commandments were written on stone, but a lot of people, what they don't know is originally the Ten Commandments were a sapphire type of stone, a sapphire substance. And in fact, in Exodus here, well, let me just read this for you. This was the one that Moses smashed. There's some party people out there. I don't know if you can hear them. Then went up Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu. Of course, Nadab and Abihu did not have a very good fate. And 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw the Elohim of Yasharel, and there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of a sapphire stone, and as it were, the body of heaven in his clearness. Now, this can actually be translated the bones of heaven. And so what Yahweh is doing here is that we already established last week that his throne is on top of the firmament. So he's literally taking a chunk of this firmament and he's like, okay, I'm coming down to the earth, but this firmament is heavy and the earth is unclean. And so I'm going to stand on this bone of heaven. And he comes down literally on the firmament. And it's such an exciting thought that he chisels the very 10 commandments based off of this. And we see the same thing here in Ezekiel 1:26. And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man upon it. Now it gets even more interesting. I could stand up and show you the tassels I'm wearing. I won't do that, but tassels are traditionally blue. And it says, and Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, this would be Numbers 15. Speak unto the children of Yasharel and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribboned blue. Now, why did this occurrence happen? Well, this happened after a man decided to break the Sabbath. The Sabbath is very important to Yah. It's the only of the 10. Now, keep in mind, right, that the 10 commandments were written on the firmament itself, on the sapphire stone. It is only of the 10. It's the fourth commandment where he says, remember. In fact, there's no other commands that I can think of or I can find where he says that, because he knows that the Sabbath day is the only command that we're going to forget, rebrand, snub, redefine, what have you. And you point this out to Christians today, and they still obstinately refuse to keep the Sabbath because it was prophesied that they would. Remember, right? And so Yah knew that we would have such a hard time remembering the Sabbath. He's like, that's it. This guy, it wasn't that he just was picking up sticks on the Sabbath. The guy was literally uprooting a tree. He took out an axe and he was chopping away at this tree obstinately to work because he was in defiance. He is in contempt of court. And when people approached him to try to get him to stop and check himself before he wrecks himself, he starts beating on the people. All right. So, and then this is, of course, based on some rabbinical books. But what's important to note here is that within these rabbinical books, they're not like making it overburdensome. They're like, this guy went out of his way to screw this up for everybody. It wasn't that he just bent over and picked up a stick. That's not what happened at all. That's the way it's advertised sometimes. So Yah's like, you know what? You need to wear these tassels so that you will remember my Sabbath day. This is how important it is to me, that you will remember my commands. And of course, they're the color of the firmament above. And it says, and it shall be unto you for a fringe, that ye may look upon it and remember all the commandments of Yahuwah and do them. So guess what, guys? It is possible to do the commands. Just throw that, because somebody needs to hear that. It is completely possible to do the commands. I have these conversations with people all the time, and you talk to any Christian, they're like, oh yeah, murder's bad. Yeah, adultery's bad. Yeah, abortion bad. All these things. And they point out like, all the people aborting babies out there, that's terrible. Don't do that. But, oh, the Sabbath. Oh, you can't keep the laws. You try to keep the laws, they will condemn you. The law is just there to condemn you. And it's like, okay, it was different a moment ago when we're talking about abortion, but as soon as you can't, eat that piece of bacon, or you actually have to keep the Sabbath, you can't go shopping at the mall on a Sabbath, or take, whatever, all of a sudden laws there to condemn you. It is completely possible to keep it, guys. This is what Mishnat Rabbi Eliezer has to say. Man, I'm sorry, my mouse is so jumpy. I'm having all sorts of tech issues tonight. Why does the Torah enjoin us regarding Tachelet? Because Tachelet resembles sapphire, and the tablets were made of sapphire, to tell you that as long as Benai Yashro gaze upon the Tachelet, they are reminded of what is inscribed on the tablets and observe the commandments. Therefore it is written, and you shall see it, the string, and remember all the commandments of God, and you shall do them. So he's connecting the actual tassels that we wear with the original 10 commandments that Moshe destroyed. Later they were written on just regular stone, as far as I'm concerned, my knowledge goes. I don't think he took another chunk out of the firmament. Maybe someone can show me where he did. But this is most likely what's called the celestial sky stone. And this is a stone that has been found in Africa, West Africa. This is what we read. According to local legends, the sky stone was discovered in Sierra Leone, West Africa, in 1990 by archaeologist and geologist Angelo Pittoni. The locals believe that these stones were once beings that inhabited the sky. Annoyed by their transgressions, God transformed them into stones and cast them down to earth to be buried in the ground. So Pittoni sent the stone for analysis to laboratories in Rome, Germany, and Tokyo, and the analysis revealed that the stone consisted of 77% oxygen, 20% carbon, and lime, with traces of silicon and other materials. Researchers concluded that the composition of the rock was unlike any other found on Earth, meaning it's alien, suggesting an extraterrestrial origin. I've seen people taking the stone, and I think they've been found in the Sahara and other regions, literally like a satellite, like it fell off the firmament and came down to Earth. And people have worn these as jewelry, things like that. And back in the past, I think they've even been sold on like eBay and such. So maybe you can find your own firmament, your own bone of heaven, and add it to make it like a lamp out of it or something. I don't know. That'd be pretty cool. I have to point this out before moving on. The tabernacle in the wilderness and the firmament, I would be kicking myself if I left out the amazing work of Andrew Hoy. And his ministry is called Project 314. So what he does here is he shows the typical understanding of the tabernacle in the wilderness. Oh, I got to point this out too. The other thing people come to me all the time, they're like, Noel, the temple was done away with. You don't have to keep the Torah anyway. You don't have to keep the Torah anymore. I'm like, well, wait a second here. When the Torah was written, guys, there was no temple in Jerusalem. Okay, so there was no temple in Jerusalem. The temple came hundreds of years later. If you recall, it went all the way up to David, and still they didn't have a temple. And it wasn't until Solomon who built the first temple. And so the commands were not intended for the temple. We see the commands being fulfilled here in the tabernacle, of which we are, of course, all told to be the living stones of the temple. But this right here is rectangular shaped, and this is how most people paint it to look. And what Andrew Hoy did about 10 years ago now, I think back in 2015, is I don't think he was even a flat earthist back then. He might have been closeted. He just came up with this, and he's like, I think it was a big dome in the wilderness, and he wrote a whole book on it. And what I love about this model, among many things that I love, is that the Holy of Holies was in the direct center there. You can kind of see it. where the smoke would come out. It's kind of gray there in the center. This would be like Polaris, the North Star. And so we see that it was set up just like a big astronomical clock in the sky. And there's another picture of it there. I'm not going to be spending too much time on it tonight. And I purposely threw this picture in here of the igloo because it looks like a dome. But that's the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. And, most likely coming from the throne over the dome, which, of course, we see the Northern Lights in the north. And so it probably is reflection. At least that's, I think, most of our contention, most of our thought is that it is coming from the throne itself. So that's pretty exciting. All right, so let's talk about the firmament in Hollywood. And unfortunately, I'm so disappointed that you're not going to hear the volume on this. I don't know what it is on my end because it just StreamYard that is being difficult with me. But let's talk about the broken firmament in the movie Time Bandit. So let's see if I could actually pull up this trailer for you guys. Of course, you can't hear this. So what happens is, this is just the trailer right here. You can see they actually just smacked the firmament. They show you in the trailer. They're on the edge of the earth. They throw a skull at it. They break the glass at the edge of the earth. And what do you see? It's the outer darkness on the other end. Pretty shocking. And then, of course, like the Prince of Darkness lives out there. Time Bandit. It was the 1980s. You had to have been there. Did anybody just hear that at all? Just making sure nobody heard that. Okay. And there it is. There they are smacking the firmament. I hear that there's a new Time Bandits movie out there, or a miniseries out there, which I haven't seen. I don't know if they're going to show that, but if you guys saw the really horrific Willow miniseries that came out about a year or two ago, it was so bad and it was so woke that Disney canceled it after they released it. I mean, Disney was embarrassed, and Disney is woke. So that's how woke this show was. I did see it through to conclusion, even though I did not enjoy a single episode. I was just cringing the whole time, but I just was looking for clues. So I was trying to, they actually have the firmament in there as well. And unfortunately, you can't find it now because they've taken the show down. I think it was like the end of the first or the second episode. And there was in the kingdom, they had a huge like force field dome over the kingdom that kept the powers of darkness out. So unfortunately, that they are not staring at the firmament in this photo. That's the best I could come up with. But we do see this here in the movie Logan's Run. Anybody out there see it? I saw this a few years ago. And this is, of course, a series of domes. But in this movie, they convinced it's this horrific society where like they have young people procreate and then they kill them off. But in this movie, they convinced them that there's really nothing outside the dome. And so they all live within the dome. And the idea of Logan's Run, his escape, is that he has to flee this firmament structure. And it's kind of like Planet of the Apes, where he discovers that there is a society beyond. It was all destroyed by like atomic bombs or whatever. But he's able to free them. And then we have this great one here. I actually have this clip. Let's see if I could play this from The Simpsons. Where is it? There it is. And again, you can't hear any of it. What I particularly, now this is a dream sequence. I think Homer is dreaming this, but what I particularly liked about that is that when it says that they break the glass in the sky, or the ceiling in the sky, they actually have water pour down, which is very different than in all these other sci-fi films where they actually say that there's things beyond the firmament. But in this one, it's pretty telling. And I think, what was this, the 1990s? I mean, this is before any of us were having a discussion on this. And they show that there's actually not just water above, but actually creatures that live up there, which I actually think there are. I think there's probably above us, there probably are creatures up there. The Simpsons movie that came out, when did that come out? About 20 years ago. That also had the town, I think it was Springfield, in a firmament. I disliked this movie so much when it came out. I remember I walked out of the movie theater with my wife, and I haven't seen a Simpsons episode since like 2000 or something like that. And I walked out, I'm like, what did we just watch? That was like, I don't know. I don't even remember, but I do remember this big dome that came down. Of course, Stephen King here, Under the Dome. Anybody see that? I have not seen this, but I hear it's also some pretty telling stuff. Now, this is what I really wanted to talk about tonight. The Truman Show. And the Truman Show, of course, he grew up in this big dome as well. And something that I never picked up, you can see Ed Harris here, he plays the Demiurge. Something I never picked up on is that if you actually look at this society that Truman lived in this bubble, it actually forms a crescent moon. You guys see that? And I've talked about this in the past about, we could see on all of the flags and a lot of emblems and things like that, coat of arms, we see this crescent moon where a lot of people are saying it's, worship of a goddess, which could be in some cases, but I actually think that it might play into the greater realm. And the fact that the crescent moon is, as I pointed out, always lit, and that the rest would be in darkness. It would be in the land of the sun and the moon, but the hidden wilderness is actually a crescent. So I think it's kind of interesting to show that there. Now, this actual town where the Truman Show takes place is right here. It's called Seaside. It is like 10 miles down the street from me. It's literally right down the street. In fact, my wife and I, my family, this very park you're looking at right here, we just went to a concert 2 nights ago. It was a free concert in the park. There was a couple of guitarists and a violinist. It was very beautiful music they played, and we just sat there. And we've been going to this town, Seaside, for 10 years now, and it has never ceased to be creepy. The town is just like in the movie. It is a perfect town. It is flawless. Now, the HOA would be a nightmare. But that being said, the town itself is just like this flawless little town with tons of money, and it is a ghost town. And we walk through there like half, like I would say like 75-80% of the houses, like nobody lives in it, and they're all perfect. It's that kind of creep vibes. And all the different scenes in the movie, like the grocery store and the place he works, it's all in this picture. And Truman's house, you can go see it all. So, man, I really wish I could play this footage. I can't even narrate this for you now because you're not going to hear it. But so anyways, we see Truman here sitting on the beach and looking at the moon. And one of the things that is, of course, also creepy about this movie is the fact that the Ed Harris Demiurge character lives in the moon. There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there, more about among the Globers, the NASA fanboys about, is the moon inhabited by spiritual entities or aliens or whatever. That being said, I think that totally there could be a lot to that there totally could be spiritual entities kind of somehow attached to the moon, looking down. And so here he plays very much like a watcher or a spiritual entity looking down upon the earth. But what I wanted to play for you guys tonight is this clip. I don't think I'm going to do it now just because it's like you can't hear it. But when my wife and I, when we sat down and watched The Truman Show about 2 years ago, now I had seen this when it came out in the theaters back in the 90s. And, obviously back then I didn't really get it. I'm like, okay, that was kind of a cute story, kind of funny, kind of went on with my life afterwards as we were expected to do, right? They put out the truth out there and make it trivial so that you don't really believe it, because, I saw it in that movie. It can't be real, right? We watched it again. And the reason I have the picture here of his wife and his best friend, this movie was a horror movie for us. We were sitting there terrified. Not like, we're really afraid, right? Like slasher flick, but like these were terrors. These were spiritual terrors at the closest possible level, where they actually have a creepy scene in this movie where this character, his best friend, is speaking to Jim Carrey and trying to convince him to stay in that town and not leave it. But then as the scene progresses, you actually come to find out that he's being fed these lines through the Demiurge up in the moon. And he's actually speaking, like his closest friend is speaking to him according to a script. Now, there's a number of ways people can take this. I don't want to make anybody paranoid, because some people are going to hear something like that and they're going to start, looking around, who are the agents, right? The agents are surrounding me and they're just trying to keep me down. Like, no, actually, the fact of the matter is most of us, like, they're not trying to, like, keep us down. All right. They've already got that, right? In society itself. When I see something like this, I'm thinking about spiritual agents. All right. The people you can't see. I'm not convinced. I'm sorry. I'm not concerned about the boots on the ground, agents, the gatekeepers and all that kind of stuff. I am perfectly capable of picking up a book and looking at the ancient books and reading this stuff for myself and finding out what the Bible has to say. I don't need to go listen to a pastor up on stage who tells me to not be obedient to the Torah and that it is Satan's will that I obey the commands. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's what people have heard their whole lives and they believe it to be true because it's been spoken so many times. I'm actually concerned about the spiritual agents out there. And a lot of you know what I'm talking about. A lot of you can look at a picture like this of Truman's wife and go, oh my goodness. Now, I don't want to step on any toes out there, but I have people talking to me all the time. They contact me and they want my advice on what to do, because they could be a woman or they could be a man, and they are married to a spouse who is in every way, shape, and form a spiritual terror, who is literally speaking for the enemy and trying everything in their power to keep them from obeying the Sabbath, or keeping the commands, or trying to feed them unclean foods. They don't want them to take the right path. And so that should hit close to home to many of us. And of course, the ending here, which is really touching, you see all these, you see like these old ladies and all these people in a bar, and you see Truman's ex-girlfriend. I think she wasn't supposed to be his girlfriend, and he fell in love with her, and they had to like kill her off or write her out or something like that. And so she's hoping he breaks free. But again, a lot of people are going to interpret something like this firmament based and go, okay, what our controllers are trying to do is they're trying to keep us in this side of the realm, and they don't want us to see the greater realm. Personally, I think our controllers can't go to the greater realm anyways. When I see something like this, I look at it from a more spiritual perspective and think, this is how the angels in heaven and the saints, it could be the millennial kingdom saints, it could be the resurrected saints, the people of the past, are looking at us and cheering us on. Now, here's an example right here. I'll give to you from Luke. This comes from Luke chapter 15. This is Messiah speaking, and he spake this parable unto them, saying, what man of you, having 100 sheep, if he lose one of them, doth not leave the 99 in the wilderness, and go after that which is lost until he find it? And when he hath found it, he layeth it on his shoulder, rejoicing. And when he cometh home, he calleth together his friends and neighbors, saying unto them, rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost. I say unto you that likewise joy shall be in heaven over one sinner that repents, more than over 99 just persons which need no repentance. Either what woman, having 10 pieces of silver, if she lose one piece, doth not light a candle and sweep the house and seek diligently till she find it? And when she has found it, she calls her friends and her neighbors together, saying, rejoice with me, for I have found the piece which I had lost. And likewise, I say unto you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of Elohim over one sinner that repents. And so, yeah, maybe I'll play the scene silently for you guys. You can see what I'm talking about. We see one more here in this is, well, let me just state what repenting is, okay? And this is where inevitably you step on toes, but this is just the Bible. And I'm reading to you from the New Testament, by the way, too. This is what John says in 1 John chapter 3. You know, this is one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. And every man that has this hope in him purifies himself even as he is pure. So again, this goes completely against the Christian message, because the Christian message is that you don't have to purify yourself because he is pure. And because he is pure, it automatically makes you pure. But that's not what John just said here. I mean, he's talking about the Torah. He undoubtedly, there is a system of commands of how we purify ourselves on a daily basis. And he's telling you, make sure that you are doing that as well, because that's what Messiah did. And then he goes on to define what sin is. The best definition in the whole Bible, and it's in the end of the New Testament, which I love. Whosoever committeth sin transgresses also the Torah, for sin is the transgression of the Torah. He just told us what it is, right? Sin is a transgression of the Torah. And ye know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him is no sin. So whosoever abides in him sins not. Okay. So again, a lot of people will then say, see, I can quote unquote sin, but I'm in him, so I'm not really sinning. Again, that's a Christian message. That's what I was raised with, but that's not what he says. He goes on to say, whosoever sins has not seen him, neither known him. Little children, let no man deceive you. So this is important here. So John is telling you there are people trying to deceive you with a false message about what sin is and what sin isn't, and what cleanliness is and what cleanliness isn't, and going to tell you that you can continue sinning because of grace, or that you're not really sinning even though you are. And he says, let no man deceive you. He that does righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous. So again, Christianity will tell you, you can't be righteous. Well, that's not what John didn't get that memo, and he was a disciple of Messiah. He was under the impression that you can do righteousness and therefore be righteous. It's not just pointing your finger at Jesus saying, well, he's righteous, so I'm righteous. No. He's saying because he is righteous, you can point the finger at him all you want, and because he's our shepherd, you follow him. Because he's righteous, you need to be righteous. And then he goes on to say, he that commits sin is of the devil. For the devil sinned from the beginning. And I put a note in there, the Torah was in the beginning, because he's just defined for you what sin is. So people are like, well, the Torah didn't come around to Mount Sinai, so I just choose to live in a time before Mount Sinai in my head because there was no Torah then. And it's like, well, wait a second. No, because he just defined what sin was. He said that sin is a transgression of the Torah. And then he said that the devil transgressed the Torah from the beginning, which the beginning is in the beginning, Genesis, right? For this purpose, the Son of Allahayam was manifested that he might destroy the works of the devil. 1 John chapter 3. So going back to this is that, going back to this message with Truman breaking out of the firmament, when I see something like this, I see what Messiah is saying. He's just one guy breaking out, and you see everybody watching this and applauding and cheering. And well, let me just play you this clip. And then, the great thing about you guys not being able to hear this is that when I actually play Spaceballs, it won't be that inappropriate. So, and there you can see all the different people watching, right? They don't know what he's going to do. They don't know if he's going to make the right decision to actually, they all want him to break out of the system. This Demiurge is trying to keep him there. Of course, we know that, occult thinking, that Demiurge is Yahweh. I don't know if you can tell, I can't actually play subtitles with this so you can see what he says. So here he's bowing off the world stage. He's walking off, and then everybody is excited that he is getting out of there. And not to sound like a broken record, this is how I see it when we choose to stop transgressing and be obedient to the Father in heaven, that there is celebration in heaven, as Messiah's words. All right. I don't know if they're in the bathtub. I'll get this down next week. I'm going to do some experiments and make sure that I can get the volume working for you guys. I thought it was working just fine. Moving on. Oh, this is interesting. Walt Disney, Epcot, and the Firmament. Now, when I was looking into this, just this week, actually, I knew plenty about Walt Disney and the Firmament, or Epcot, I should say. What I did not realize, I did not know this until this week, that when Walt Disney planned the original Epcot, this is the famous diagram of it here, and he put like notice it's a big circle, and it's very it has some almost sacred geometry to it. Kind of interesting to look at it now. You could see like the crops outside. It was built to be a big terrarium. He intended this to be under a solid dome. This comes from Mickey Mouse History by Mike Wallace. And this is what he says. Disney dreamed of a planned, controlled community, a showcase for American industry and research, a permanent testing ground for new ideas in urban planning under its gigantic bubble dome. So when I talked last week about a terrarium, I wish I knew this then. I would have added that in right there. Now, the Epcot we got was radically different. This is what's called Spaceship Earth. And one of the points I'm going to be making tonight is talking about gases and how they expand and escape, and that you need a solid structure to put them under, or else they're just going to keep rising forever. And it's kind of interesting here with Spaceship Earth, because in a way, he kind of has, even though okay, let me just keep showing here. It is a solid structure, but this is what really struck me back when I realized the Earth was flat. 9 years ago now, or something like that. It's been almost 10 years. My wife and I had just kind of realized it. And if you saw my presentation last week, it was looking at that very simple pen and ink sketch of Hebrew cosmology when the whole Bible crackled with animation, came to life. I literally got down on my knees. I was at the computer. I got down on my knees. I prayed and I said, "Is this true?" And Yah was just like, "Yes, this is true. That what you see here, this is the way the world was created." And so right after this, we're still kind of in the world, right? We go to Epcot, and I'm walking around Epcot. And so you see here all these different countries of the world. Here's a map here where you can kind of see it. And the different countries of the world are designed in a big circle. You go around this lake. And I think I was right there in Germany, kind of on the left. I was in China, Germany area. And I had this thought. And I said to my wife, my sons were only a couple years old. They're in strollers. And I looked over at Spaceship Earth, that big solid dome. And I said, they want us to think we live on that. But all these countries of the world are on this flat lake. It's flat. And they're telling us we live on that. And it's all like a simulated reality. It's all fake. This is the reality right here, this world showcase that we're walking around. And so from the earliest times, of course, isn't it interesting that the earliest film studios, they're all in on this together. They all decide for their opening logo that I'm not going to take you through every single studio on how they all basically show space or some element of space. But Universal Studios, or Universal Pictures, I should say, basically decided on what the Earth looked like from a globe perspective long before they ever sent a satellite or a spaceship or anything up there to check on the creds. And of course, the very early ones you could see, they would show like an airplane kind of flying around, which is totally not legitimate. But what really got to me about this is in Isaiah 40:22, and it says this: "Has it not been declared to you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth?" Of course, the creation message was explained to us in the beginning, Genesis chapter 1. "It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to live in." All right. Now, I'm not going over the circle here. Obviously, the earth is a footstool. It's not a spinning, wobbling globe that he's trying to keep his feet on as it's going all over. Like, I can't stay on this thing. It's a circle, all right? But that's not what I want you to see. It says here that the inhabitants of the earth, that Yah looks down at us, and the inhabitants of the earth are like grasshoppers. Okay, we're down on the earth. He is looking down at us. We're not. So this happens in documentaries all the time. All right, pay attention to this. And they'll show like a scene in New York City or something, and people are bustling about in the streets and the subways and the taxis, and they're going up and down the escalators, and they have their briefcases and their suits and their dresses and their high heels, and they're just walking around, and it's a busy scene. And then all of a sudden they show a picture of the earth from space, like a satellite shot or whatever, and they're actually showing you the earth from Yah's perspective. like how he looks down at us and sees us, but they do it in such a way where like that is our destiny. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And it's actually very conceited when you see it from that perspective. And again, like when Universal is doing this, they're not telling you, oh, this is how, of course, the earth is not a globe spinning, but they're not telling you, oh, this is God's perspective. They're actually saying this is our destiny. This is us. This is our right that make the earth our footstool. And we want to ascend up to the heavens, just like Satan does. And we want to rule and look down from above. It's totally satanic message. And of course, the most basic form of mind control is repetition. And the man who made this meme, I don't even know if he was a flat earthist. I just pulled this off of a random meme. The guy, I know the guy who hosted this, and he has never shown any hint that he was a flat earthist. I just think it's interesting, like the irony that he's showing globe earth, globe earth, globe earth, globe earth over and over again. And people think that, right, it must be true because it's mind control. They've been brainwashed. It must be true because they see it so often everywhere they go in all the media. All right, getting into Spaceballs. And this is one here. Hold on. I need some coffee for this. This is the only one I'm actually really relieved. I'm really bummed the Truman Show didn't work out. I'm actually relieved that I can play this as they talk, and I don't have to worry about what they're saying. That's not, inappropriate. But let's go ahead and play this for you guys. For me, this is the most shocking. Can I even unmute myself? Okay, I'm going to put this on mute so I can talk. This is the most shocking confession. One of the most shocking confessions in a movie that I have ever seen. Now, there's Mel Brooks right there, right? Jewish guy, funny, right? They either became doctors or comedians after the quote unquote Holocaust. Funny man. But I think this is Mel Brooks. Like, is he in the know? Does he know that much? And the thing about a joke is that it's funny because it's true. Now, there it is right there. Did you see that? Like, literally, they showed a firmament around this planet. And they want to, okay. So here they're the good guys that are approaching this planet. There is a window opening up in the firmament. In order to destroy this planet, they create a super weapon, which, unlike the Death Star, this is, what is it called? Meter made or whatever, something made, a mega made. And the joke, let me just fast forward here. There's Mega Maid right there. The joke, of course, is that she is the vacuum of space. She has a vacuum because, right, the vacuum of space. And they're going to suck out all the oxygen from this globular place. There it is right there. And they're saying suck, suck, suck. And it's sucking out all the oxygen through the windows in the heaven. And oh no, there goes the whole environment. Everything is being sucked. Oh, look there. Oh man. There goes all the trees, space. Everyone is suffocating now. They're all dying. And there is that. Vacuum of space. You saw it on Spaceballs. So I want to talk about this a little bit. Questioning gas and vacuum of space on Google. I went to Google and I asked them about this. And I asked, I can't remember the exact question I asked. You can see the answer they gave here. And this is the answer they gave. They said, yes, gas must be contained because it has no fixed shape or volume, meaning it will expand to fill the entire space available to it. Get it? Space, right? Outer space. So it needs a container to be confined within a specific area. Otherwise, it will simply disperse and dissipate into the surrounding environment. Now, here's some key points about gases and containment. And again, all of this here, this came off of Google. And so they're admitting, like, they have no explanation for this whatsoever. I actually, I saw it happen. I was at the Flat Earth Conference in 2019, in which I won't give his name, a specific astronomer was there who was there to debunk the flat earth. And he was approached and asked this question. And he's like, well, if you don't believe in a firmament, you don't believe that there's a solid structure as the Bible claims, then what's keeping the gases in? he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, show me a single experiment in science where you can have gases just freely contained within an environment without a container. And when he realized that, he was so agitated. Like, we're talking just angry, like pissed. Like, he was so red hot angry, and he just stomped off. He never had an explanation for that. He never debunked it. In all his letters, he still comes out with, and this is what it says. No definite shape or volume. Unlike solids and liquids, gas particles are constantly moving and have large spaces between them, allowing them to expand to fill any container they are placed in. So gases have to have a container. Okay. If there is no container over us, then there's no gases. The gases are just gone. All right. Pressure exerted on container walls. When gas particles collide with the walls of a container, they exert pressure, which is why sealed container is necessary to hold the gas. Thank you, Google, for giving me the truth on this in your total innocence or ignorance. I don't really know. Importance of closed containers. To effectively contain a gas, a container must be completely closed to prevent the gas from escaping, which, taking you back to Spaceballs here, this is why we have the window in heaven. They open it up, and now the vacuum of space can suck out the gases in which everybody would die. And oh, you gotta love these like movies from our childhood where we were so ignorant and we didn't even understand what they were telling us. All right, now this video footage probably. Well, I don't want to assume that everybody out there has seen this. This is why I'm playing this, because there's probably somebody out there who has never seen this before. It might have been 2015. I think it was the spring of 2016 that this video kind of went viral within the flat earth community. And we were all trying to figure out what in the world happened here. So let's just see this. This is a rocket launch out of either Nevada or Eastern California, out in the desert. You can see it shooting off from the desert. So it's going up, 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 up. And then the oddest thing happens. And to be honest with all of you, I don't have an answer for this. Everyone was saying it hit the firmament. And I'm just thinking, how is that possible? And I'll explain why in a second. So here it goes. It's going up. It's going up. It's going up into low Earth orbit. I don't know how high it is. It's pretty high now. Still going. That baby is flying. You can see it spinning around. It's giving me like vertigo just looking at this. Still going up. I know you can't hear it, but it's still going up. Still going. How long is this video? I should have played this in double time for you. Oh, boom, there it is. Now it just stops. What's crazy about this is that you actually see hold on here. Picture. And you can actually see the moon as well. I mean, what's that there? Is that the moon? What is that? What is that out there? I think that's the moon. And I've looked at this many times. I don't know. A kind of interesting video. This one here, SpaceX, and this happened October 7th, 2018. It's happened over Los Angeles. And what in the world just happened there? Now, a lot of people have commented on this, and it actually looks like that's actual real water there. And it's caused many of us to theorize that, let me play this again for you guys. You can look at it. That it was actually skimming along the bottom of the firmament. And then we're actually seeing like a wake, like it just hit, like boom, it hit the water. Now, I'm not saying that's what happens, but it has caused me to wonder if the firmament is, even though it's a crystalline firmament, right? It's keeping the waters above, that if it's almost like some sort of like almost like gelatin at the bottom. And for those of you who have seen the footage of the oceanographers going to the very bottom of the ocean, and they go down there and they they have found that they can't go any deeper than a certain depth. And it's like a different type of water down there. It's a very, almost like a hard water, and they can't penetrate it. And I almost wonder if it's the same thing up there in the firmament, that on the outer layer of it, it literally is like, it's just like a water that's hanging there, that maybe you could like skid along it, and like the water will just kind of drop down, and you have to go a little bit deeper into the water that is basically impenetrable to get to the bones of heaven. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but kind of interesting footage there. All right. Well, I can't talk about that guy because you guys don't have any volume. This here, the Van Allen belts. And, you know, the shocking thing about NASA is that in their confessionals, now you see, like, if you look this up now, there have been so many agitated hornets over the claims made in this video, that they're like, anybody who thinks that NASA can't cross the Van Allen belt is an idiot, you know, that kind of stuff, and just the name calling. But they basically tell you here that they have not figured out how to pass the Van Allen belt, which is a little bit shocking, because you're like, wait a second here. I'm pretty sure the moon is supposed to be on the other side of the Van Allen belt. Now, you get down here to Apollo 12, astronaut Alan Bean, and man, I wish you guys could. I'm going to fix this issue, and I'm going to come back and play these next week for you guys. And here we have Alan Bean straight up saying, he's asked the question about the Van Allen belt, and he's like, oh, we never crossed the Van Allen belt. And the guy, and it's like, well, wait a sec. No, like, it seems like as an Apollo astronaut, Apollo 12 in this case, remember the 13th actually crossed the Van Allen belt too. It was a faded, they were able at least to go around the moon. You would think that an astronaut would know that they had crossed the Van Allen belt. And of course, I think all of us are under the impression here that the Van Allen belt, if you're not catching up to what I'm saying here, is that the Van Allen belt is most likely the firmament. It cannot be crossed. All right, so let's talk about the Prince of Power of the Air and the silver cord. So this comes from Ascension of Isaiah. And when I talk about the seven firmaments of heaven, I'll be reading from this book. This is what he says. And this is Isaiah ascending up to the firmament. And he hasn't crossed it yet. He hasn't gone into the first heaven above. Now, when we talk about the seven firmaments of heaven, some people say the first heaven is below the firmament. Some other books will say the first heaven is above the firmament. All right. So the orders are a little bit reversed, whatever. Side point, he says, and we ascended to the firmament, I and he, and there I saw Samael and his host. And there was great fighting therein, and the angels of Satan were envying one another. So he is literally going up to what we would call low Earth orbit. Just so you know, I do think that there is the ether up there. There's a type of low Earth orbit. And there's a point to this, that he sees the demons and the angels of Satan and Samael himself. Samael is Azazel. He is the dragon of old. They're up there bickering and fighting. And here's what I want you to see. And as above, so on the earth also. Did Isaiah just take a dig into the occult? Yes, I think he did. For the likeness of that which is in the firmament is here on the earth. And this is where we get the magician card and tarot, as above, so below. Now, within the Bible, we have a slightly different phrase. Messiah said, on earth as it is in heaven, right? This is how we are to pray, that we want the events, the course of the events on the earth to be in our lives, in the lives of our family and friends, but also on the whole earth to be as it is in heaven. And so, of course, heaven being above the firmament, whereas here the as above, so below is the occult. What they want is as it is with their master, Hasatan, arguing just below the firmament. That's how they want it on the earth. And that's certainly what Isaiah says is going on. So we actually see this prayer. We see it in Matthew 6, and this is where Messiah says, but when ye pray, use not vain repetitions, as the heathen do, for they think that they shall be heard for their much speaking. Be not ye therefore like unto them, for your Father knows what things ye have need of before ye ask him. After this manner, therefore, pray ye, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread, and so on. This same prayer can be found in 1 Adam and Eve 23. A very it's almost eerie how close it is. And so pay attention to this. And Adam began to make more requests of Elohim. Now, keep in mind, this is the first Adam, and Messiah was the second Adam. And he said, "Our Father who art in heaven, be gracious unto us, O Adonai, or Elohim." And actually, the Adonai there, it says the Lord. It could very well be, "O Yahweh," or Elohim. And giving us more connection to Yahweh being Yahushua HaMashiach. "Hallowed be your name, and let the remembrance of thee be glorified, heaven above and upon earth here below." So there is the Lord's prayer, Adonai's prayer, given in First Adam and Eve 23. That should be our prayer, that the events up in heaven are down here. So we also see, and I'm building a case here as I take you back to NASA and the spacewalks, the evil spirits below the firmament. We see this again in the Testament of Solomon. I'm so sorry this is so like jumping around. My mouse is going crazy on me right now. "And when they were gone, I ordered Orneus to be brought forward and said to him, 'Tell me how you know this.' And he answered, 'We demons ascend into the firmament of heaven and fly about among the stars, and we hear the sentences which go forth upon the souls of men.'" Now, when he says into the firmament, I'm under the impression he's talking right under the firmament. All right. He doesn't actually go like into it and above it. I don't think he's able to. And there is good context for that. "And we hear the sentences which go forth upon the souls of men. And forthwith we come, and whether by force or influence, or by fire or by sword, or by some accident, we veil our act of destruction. And if a man does not die by some untimely disaster or by violence, then we demons transform ourselves in such a way as to appear to men and be worshipped in our human nature." They're telling you that many demons are able to get foresight into humanity, and they're able to go translate and speak into the ears of fortune tellers and so on and so forth through their knowledge that they get up in the firmament. "I, therefore, having heard this, glorified Yahweh, Elohim. And again, I questioned the demons, saying, 'Tell me how you can ascend into heaven, being demons, and amidst the stars and holy angels intermingle.' And he answered, 'Just as things are fulfilled in heaven, so also on earth are fulfilled the types of all of them. For there are principalities, authorities, world rulers, and we demons fly about in the air, and we hear the voices of the heavenly beings and survey all the powers. And as having no ground or basis on which to alight and rest, we lose strength and fall off like leaves from trees, and men seeing us imagine that the stars are falling from heaven.'" So right there, this demon is explaining to Solomon that the falling stars we see are actually these spiritual entities going up, and the demons are different than Satanael and his angels up there, or you can even say the Watchers, that they're able to stay up there, but these demons can only stay so long and they fall down to the earth. And he's saying we are the falling stars. And, eventually all Hollywood stars eventually fall, don't they? It says this again in the Ascension of Isaiah. This is speaking of Belial. "And again, he descended into the firmament, where dwelleth the ruler of this world. And he gave the password to those on the left, and his form was like theirs, and they did not praise him there. But they were envying one another and fighting, for here there is a power of evil envying about trifles." I don't know why I just put Belial there. This is actually, this might be talking about Messiah. I'm not sure in the context here. So according to the Ascension of Isaiah, one of the reasons that when Messiah came down to the earth and he passed through the firmament, they did not recognize him, the demons and the prince of power of the air there, because he actually transformed himself and he lowered himself, and they were expecting to be glorified. And in their thinking, they wanted to be so glorified that they couldn't imagine how anyone, in their pride, they couldn't imagine how anyone would come down from heaven and not be glorious. Paul says this in Ephesians 2:2. He says the same thing. He talks about the prince of power of the air. Where in the time past he walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the Ruach that now worketh in the children of disobedience. So there's only two outcomes in this life. All right. We're either going to live according to on the earth as it is in heaven, according to Messiah's prayer. We're going to live a righteous life. We're going to walk according to the righteousness of our shepherd, or we are going to live in disobedience to the commands. I already showed you what the Torah, the definition of sin is. It's a transgression of the Torah. We will live as a child of disobedience according to Prince of Power of the Air, as above, so below. So for all the people out there that are criticizing the occult and, oh, look at this, and Aleister Crowley, and as above, so below, and all this kind of stuff, it's like, well, okay, are you living that? Are you living according to the Prince of Power of the Air, who is disobedient, who transgressed the Torah from the very beginning, according to 1 John chapter 3? Of course, we see the Antichrist comes down as well from this ethereal realm up there. It says, after it was consummated, Beliar, the great ruler, the king of this world, the Prince of Power of the Air, will descend, who has ruled it since it came into being. Yea, he will descend from his firmament in the likeness of a man, a lawless king, the slayer of his mother, who himself, even this king. The slayer of his mother, by the way, is Nero. Nero was the man who killed his mother. And of course, historians will look at this and go, clearly, the writer of this book is describing Nero as the Antichrist, who was literally possessed by Beliar, the prince of darkness, came down from the firmament, descended, entered man, ruled, and killed his mother, so on and so forth. Came down from the firmament. And of course, it then says this, and after 1,332 days, Adonai, it says the Lord. It could be saying Yahweh, okay? It could be saying Yahweh will come with his angels and with the armies of the holy ones from the seventh heaven with the glory of the seventh heaven. And he will drag Beliar into Gehenna and also his armies. And by his armies, I think this is talking about his angels that are in allegiance with him. They will be dragged away. So let's start talking. Man, this is just jumping tonight. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, let's talk about Ed White here. Now, let's see if I could pull this up. There's astronaut Bean. Okay. I don't have it now. Bummer. All right. The crazy thing about this spacewalk here, and we're going to start looking at the silver cord and asking the question, are they actually mimicking the Prince of Power of the Air and the demons up in the ethereal realm and trying to stay up there as long as they can? Of course, what happens to a space shuttle when it comes back down, right? It's on fire, just like a falling star. It's just mimicking the entire thing. Now, with Ed White, when he did this, the U.S.'s first spacewalk on June 3rd, 1965, you could look at the footage. I have a note here for the 2:35 mark of the video, which apparently I don't have for you guys now. He actually turns his helmet, which is like, you're not supposed to be able to do that. It's a big, you've been caught. And still blindly, the space guy, the NASA fanboys, they refuse to comment on it. They just turn their heads, get it? They turn their heads just like he did and look away. You shouldn't be able, in an airtight helmet, be able to turn your head. Not even Batman can do that in his mask. So here's from the movie, what was it? What was that movie with Sandra Bullock and George Clooney that came out? But anyways, that was the movie that really, I think it came out in 2014, and it was the movie that really exposed the fourth wall that we have in all of NASA's footage of the ISS or whatever. It's they never give away the fourth wall, right? They show you the three other walls, but they're on a stage. They never turn the camera. And in that movie, they were just spinning the camera around like crazy. And then people were like, wait a second, how come they're showing this in a pretend movie where they could spin the camera all around, but in a real space environment, in a space shuttle or the ISS, they never do that. And the big thing about this movie was the idea of the silver cord breaking. If this breaks and you drift off into the vacuum of space, you are a dead man, right? So I want to ask the question, is this actually mimicking astral projection? Is the ISS or the space shuttle the temple, our body, and the astronaut the soul? as it ascends from the body. And this is what we read in the Bible, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken. So what happens if the silver cord is loosened? So it's given this picture, if you ever think of like an Eastern Orthodox church, and they'll have the incense in the bowls, and it's hung from these ropes, these cords that go up to the ceiling. So if the silver cord breaks and the bowl falls and the bowl shatters and breaks, and that is a representative of our lives, our physical bodies being broken as we lose our connection to the wherever our soul is tied to. Or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. Then shall the dust return to the earth. It's telling you right there. So it's clearly the silver cord it's saying this is your belly button, right? When you're born, it's snipped, but your soul, you don't snip the the silver cord, the belly button of your soul. It's still connected to this world tree that we can't see. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto Elohim, who gave it. Ecclesiastes 12, 6-7. I'm going to be reading to you now from, I think he's here tonight, Sean Walking Bear. He gave this, he's an incredible writer, and he has written a lot of short stories or articles on his own experiences in shamanism for the Unexpected Cosmology. He comes from the Cree tribe, which is kind of up in the Canada way, northwest area, I believe. And this is what he says. This was on one of his shamanistic exercises from many years ago. And he had this experience to say, I found myself, now this is after days and days of like fasting, and he's actually in a community with a bunch of other dudes, some other tribe members. I don't know if they're all Cree. They might have been from multiple tribes, and he could give more details on this. But this is what actually happens in his vision. I found myself hovering in the air above my tents. I looked below me and noticed I was tethered from a cord coming out of my navel. And this experience is what people all over the world, all different religions, have the same experience. And he's talking about astral projection here. All right. He's astral projecting above his physical body, and he's looking down and seeing this invisible piece of his soul connected to his navel. It led through the top of my tent and anchored inside. It must be attached to my body. Is this an out-of-body experience? And now I am not, just so you guys know, I have never astral projected. I am not interested in astral projecting. I am not telling you to do this, okay? I'm just telling you that this is done. It is and I believe it is a real experience. I don't think people are just making this up. I think this is a genuine experience that can be done. And in my research of astral projection, like several years ago, I was really into researching it. And I started finding that everybody who's had this experience, they might do it like a dozen times or 100 times even, but the first time or two, they're like freaking out because they're so concerned that they'll never be able to find their body again. But they find that their cord, it jerks them back into their body again. And so that's the idea. If you lose the cord, you're dead. You just float away into, outer space, figuratively. It was still evening, and there was a strange yellow glow in the sky. I felt a cool wind blowing all around me. I looked around my surroundings and noticed I was still at the campground, and there were others tethered to their bodies. So if you can visualize this, he is above his tent. He's looking down. He's seeing that his cord is connecting through a hole in his tent down to his body. He can't see his body down there. But now he's looking around, and he's seeing all these other tribe members or people from other tribes or whatever the context of that was. And he's seeing that they are also, their souls are floating above their tents with their navels attached through the tents. The other men were all hovering over their tents, fast asleep, except for one individual who looked visibly confused and in terror. And this is what I told you about. The many people, the first time they astral project, they are in a state of terror because they're just like, they feel so out of control. They don't know what's going on. And they're afraid that they can't ever get back again. So that's kind of interesting, right? He's looking around, and I don't know how many there were, dozens, 100, 50, I don't really know, but they're all asleep. Isn't that crazy? This idea that they were just asleep, they didn't even know, but there was one guy who was awake that he saw, and he himself was awake. I then noticed that right in front of me, in a distance towards the east, was a gigantic sparkling tree. Now, when I first read this, I'm like, whoa. So pay attention to this. with a height reaching far above into the night sky. The tree was glowing with a bright yellow. Its bark was outlined with multiple glowing lines and wandering lights that flowed along the tree in opposite directions. They resembled stars. It was as if the lines of the tree were being used as a highway by these orbs. It was as if I was viewing the Sundance tree for how it spiritually appears and what it represents, the world tree. And I would venture to say this is probably maybe even the tree of life. It was beautiful and sacred. I knew this was a vision, and it felt powerful. I was in awe of its sheer enormity. Above the treetop was what looked like a cosmic highway. Millions of beings and stars were traveling along the highway surrounded by the heavens. Was this the spirit road? Is my spirit on that road traveling to return to my body? I remembered what the elder had said to me. I watched as the tree itself sparkled with traveling spirits bound for the cosmic highway stretching across the heavens. From the corner of my eye, I spotted one of the hovering bodies across from me suddenly get yanked down back inside their tent. One by one, each body proceeded to shoot downwards, disappearing into their tents. Perhaps they were returning to their physical bodies. The spectacle was becoming alarmingly closer. It was eventually going to be my turn. I braced myself. I felt myself suddenly get yanked downward. My head snapped backwards, and I felt my spirit slam back inside of my body. My physical body shook with force as if it hit the ground. I woke immediately and sat upwards. Wow, this could not be a vision. This was happening in real time. I just witnessed the return of the souls after the Sundance ceremony. I could not stop thinking of what I had just witnessed as well as experienced. It was sacred, magical, and very real. And that comes from Sean Walking Bear's article or short story he wrote on the Sundance vision. And that was just a snippet from it. So speaking of which, let's talk about the firmament is a spirit. You guys know, if you watch me regularly, that I have talked about this several times now, but it's one of those I think it's important to insert here, particularly for those who may have never watched some of my older material. We saw this with the Disney, the 1950s propaganda earlier tonight, where they did show you Nut or Nuit, depending on who you're referencing. They pronounce her name differently. Nobody can seem to agree, including Aleister Crowley. But the Egyptians perceived the firmament as an actual spiritual entity, a woman that they would actually show the sun and the moon as like boats up on top of the water, and the stars are in the water, which is my point of view. When we talk about the firmament, we come from different denominations, and some people say the stars are below the firmament. I actually believe they are in the firmament. We cannot get to them. We cannot touch them, and that they actually kind of, the pulsating light actually shows like, looks like they're underwater. Well, I want to show you a couple passages from scripture here that says the same thing, that the firmament is indeed a spirit. It says in 2 Baruch, "O you that have made the earth, hear me, that have fixed the expanse or the firmament by your word, and have made firm the height of the heaven by the Ruach. They have called from the beginning of the world that which did not yet exist, and they obey you." So this is talking here in the context of the firmament being a spirit, and that this spirit firmament obeys Yahweh. And again, we see a second witness in 2 Esdras. "Upon the second day you made the spirits of the firmament, the Ruach of the firmament, and commanded it to part asunder and to make a division betwixt the waters, that the one part might go up and the other remain beneath." So if there is any doubt, if anyone out there is saying I'm confusing 2 Baruch, that it's not saying the firmament is a spirit, which I believe it is, and that this spirit was obedient, we see the same thing happen in 2 Esdras, that indeed there was a command put forward to the spirits of the firmament, and the spirit of the firmament obeyed and separated the water above from below. And of course, the reality is that we live in a spiritual realm everywhere. And without going too much into this tonight, I don't want to detract. I see the spiritual world as three different categories. I see there are righteous spirits. And a righteous spirit is someone who is obedient to the laws of heaven. They are, keeping clean. They are, keeping the Sabbath, so on and so forth, right? They are being obedient to Yahweh. Then there are wicked spirits. A wicked spirit is disobedient to the commands. They are leading other people away from obedience, and they might even be accusing people. They are devils, right? They are unclean spirits. They are unclean all the time. They are never clean. You don't want to be a wicked spirit. And then there's a middle category of spirits who are neither righteous nor wicked. They are just spirits who may be good, may be bad. They may be obedient. They may be disobedient, but they have a free will. They can obey or disobey, and they are farming the earth. They are the weather department. They are lightning and thunder and rain and snow and, the wind and the waves and fire and all this kind of stuff, the trees and just so on and so forth. And they're just kind of doing their own thing. They could be obedient, disobedient, but the whole world is formed by these different spirits. And we see that the firmament is certainly not an exception to the rule. All right. Now, several years ago, if you would have known me back in like 2017, 2018, I was really big on researching like the fourth dimension, DMT, a lot of things like this. And what I started finding, shockingly, was that in the 1950s and the 1960s, of course, there's a lot of connections like with like MK Ultra and intelligence agencies and what they were doing with testing of drugs and how it was interlinked with NASA, of all things. So there was a guy named Steven Zara, and he had a landmark. I'm just going to read you some snippets here from an article I wrote for 8 years ago. He had a landmark pioneering bioessay into the space-time effects of DMT, which quite ironically documented the very language which NASA astronauts would later employ in the decades to come. So the thing is with DMT is that, hopefully you're seeing all the connections here. The DMT was a way to search into the realities of the microcosm, like the spiritual realities, things you can't see in the physical realm. And they were tying it up into going up into the ethereal realm up there where we see the evil spirits are up there, right? Hopefully you guys can all see this tie-ins. So, of course, he's tied in with the MK Ultra program, all this kind of stuff. And this is what we read in the book Mystery School in Hyperspace by Graham St. John. He says, with a healthy budget and top-level directives to secure state interest, the CIA bought in the cooperation of doctors and scientists from across the United States and Canada, many among them champions of the psychotomimetic paradigm, often working independently from one another and oblivious to CIA designs. This is really important, guys. How many people out there are actually working for the CIA? They don't know it. They have no clue whatsoever. This is just like the Manhattan Project, where you have all these hundreds and hundreds of people working on something and they don't know what the person on the left or right is doing. Or like the Apollo missions, where there was so much like outsourcing for everything from a pencil to a compass to screws to aluminum or whatever, wheels, like all these different companies, and nobody knew how this thing was being assembled. They just all had this faith that, okay, NASA's ordered like 1,000 screws of so many inches, and I'm just going to deliver them, and they're going to go for something, right? So it's the same thing with all these doctors. So they're oblivious to CIA designs. This well-oiled research network gathered intelligence, often using unethical methods, on the effects of pharmacopoeia on human subjects. All right. This is what happened with of one volunteer in Zara's research, and he said this after coming down from DMT. He said, actually, he might have been on DMT when he said this. He described it like this: the whole world is brilliant. The whole room is filled with spirits. It makes me dizzy. Now it is too much. I feel exactly as if I were flying. I have the feeling this is above everything, above the earth. And as the effects wore off, he said this: it is comforting to know I am back on earth again. Everything has a spiritual tinge to it, but it is so real. I feel that I have landed. Now, Graham St. John, this guy he's really into the mystery religions. He's really into the space narrative. He's not questioning it, but he's like, well, isn't this interesting that, or maybe if he is questioning it, he's been very, very low key about it. And he's like, isn't it interesting that Neil Armstrong said the same thing as this DMT guy? This is Neil Armstrong. He says, one small step in the sea of tranquility. He says, Houston, tranquility base here. The Eagles landed. And then upon returning, he says, upon returning to Earth, Mission Control Center in Houston would message the Apollo 11 crew, Roger, tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You've got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. So this is what Graham St. John has to say about this. Over the next decade, the sequence of events from launch into space, orbit, return to Earth, were analogous to the sequence involved in a psychedelic trip, intake, high, and landing, which explains why during this period, space programs, the activities of astronauts and cosmonauts, and NASA radio dialogue in particular, provided immediate allegorical resources for those undergoing psychoactivated rites of passage. So we talked about how Neil Armstrong, or it might have been Buzz Aldrin, I don't remember who actually, I think it was Armstrong who brought the Masonic flag up to, they actually made like the Sea of Tranquility or whatever into like a Masonic lodge or something like that. But it was all part of a ceremony, right? And so the idea is that the very journey to the moon and the back and how they did it all, it was all part of a rites of passage. It was all part of a ceremony. Now, Stanley Kubrick, of course, he did 2001: A Space Odyssey, and many people speculate that he actually directed the moon landing footage, is certainly what I think. And 2001: A Space Odyssey was kind of NASA getting the technology kind of prep. It's when you watch 2001, it's very slow. This is not George Lucas in space, right? This is not like quick motion and dialogue. It's just everything is very slow and trying to show spaceships land and take off and all that kind of stuff. So let's see here. What did I have? This is okay. So author Dennis McKenna. And he is the brother of DMT enthusiast Terrence McKenna. Many of you know who he is. And he's commented on the film, and this is what he had to say. The light show at the climax, as David Bowman's module, that's the fictional character in there, is sucked into the hyperspatial portal, is close enough to the DMT light show that many of us assume the film sequence had been modeled after it. All right. So here again, you're seeing all the intel agencies. Remember how everything is like interlinked, but nobody knows it. They're all working for the CIA, but they don't really know it. This even goes to movie directors and stuff like that, right? So they're all basically being fed these scripts, and they're getting this research on DMT psychedelia, and they're implementing this into the very idea of space travel to the masses. Like Bowman's hyperspatial plunge into the monolith portal, DMT brings with it a sense of rapid acceleration, of diving headlong into an overwhelmingly bizarre abyss, freighted with portentousness and hints of insect-like metamorphosis. So the same thing happened in Star Wars. And so let me just give you, okay, so again, this comes from Graham St. John. He says, hyperspace became a powerful literary device, the source of energetic powers and capabilities that enhance it and transform normal human abilities. So let me just read you this line from my article here. So consider Luke Skywalker and the plight of his newfound droid friends in the original Star Wars. Here on a binary sun-scorched planet, we find a simple farm boy, having never traveled beyond his own dust-cropping homestead, which happens to lie in the furthest rim of the galaxy. He's taken up the old wizard's invitation to become like his father before him and learn the mystical magic of an all-penetrating force. He's an insider now as esoteric knowledge goes. And quite suddenly, when a tyrannical empire bears down upon him, Luke finds himself sputtering forward through hyperspace in order to escape what would otherwise prove his certain doom. Skywalker has ascended spiritually above the capabilities of our own human experience. And though the movie is far from over, already we can conclude that his life will never be the same. So there's only a couple instances in the the original trilogy, which are like that exciting. And that's one of them when they go to hyperspace in the first Star Wars. And again, in Empire Strikes Back, remember Han Solo and Chewbacca were never able to go into hyperspace. It was like broken for them. And finally they were able to fix it. And the big exciting conclusion to that movie is when they're able to go above and beyond human ability. So there's a common experience with DMT in space-time. Those who partake, since they are away longer than the duration measured on the clock, says Graham St. John. And Dr. Rick Strassman, author of DMT, The Spirit Molecule, he conducted studies with DMT among 6 subjects of the University of New Mexico, one of which was a volunteer named Sarah. And this is what she was a member of the Wiccan community. So she was, some sort of witch. But this is what she described while on DMT. She said, there was a sound like a hum that turned into a whoosh. And then I was blasted out of my body at such speed, with such force, as if it were the speed of light. The colors were aggressive, terrifying. I felt as if they would consume me, as if I were on a warp speed conveyor belt, heading straight into the cosmic psychedelic buzzsaw. That sounds awful. The psychedelic buzzsaw? No, thank you. I think I'll skip that. I was terrified. I felt abandoned. I'm completely and totally lost. I have never been so alone. How can you describe what it feels like to be the only entity in the universe? All right. So now let's talk about Einstein and relativity. So hopefully you saw just a glimpse there. I was reading pieces from my article on DMT and how it actually shaped the entire space narrative. I mean, think about that. Like maybe you'll never watch Star Wars the same way again. And, just like Spaceballs, I just go back to this stuff. Like how in the world are these Hollywood writers? Like I know writer types. Like how in the world are they coming up with this stuff? And it's very hard to find an esoteric person to begin with. But one of the things about a lot of these esoteric storylines, like Star Wars or whatever, and I haven't even gotten into baseball tonight. There's probably not time for it. I mean, think about like people who are into baseball. They're not your esoteric types. They're not. And yet it is a super esoteric sport. And so there's something about it that if you can put these very esoteric qualities into something, but you don't tell people that's what it is. They're looking at it from a very exoteric perspective. There's something that really resonates with people, even though they don't know it. So it is interesting, the whole DMT narrative and how it opened up the spiritual world, and then they actually based the space narrative off of that. Hopefully you guys see all those connections. All right, Einstein and relativity. So there were a few things that happened leading up to Einstein that were a big problem. One was the Michelson-Gale experiment. Another was Airy's failure, and then there was the Sagnac experiment, as well as the Michelson-Morley experiment. Now, I'm going to be reading really quickly from Malcolm Bowden's book, and this is what he has to say on these three. He's, of course, a flat earthist. He says, the Michelson-Gale experiment, this detected the ether passing the surface of the earth with an accuracy of 2% of the speed of the daily rotation of the earth. So basically, it is showing, the Michelson-Gale experiment was showing that the earth does not move, it is stationary, and that there is an actual ether up there that is moving. And so when they say that the earth is moving at like 1,000 miles per hour, that's actually the ether that is moving. Thus, the Michelson-Morley experiment detected no movement of the earth around the sun. Yet the Michelson-Gale experiment measured the earth's rotation to within 2%. All right, now we have a second one here, Airy's failure. And this showed that let me just explain this real quick. Telescopes have to be very slightly tilted to get the starlight going down the axis of the tube because of the Earth's speed around the sun. Airy filled the telescope with water that greatly slowed down the speed of the light inside the telescope and found that he did not have to change the angle of the telescope. This showed that the starlight was already coming in at the correct angle so that no change was needed. This demonstrated that it was the stars moving relative to a stationary Earth and not the fast orbiting Earth moving relative to the comparatively stationary stars. Now there's one more here, the Sagnac experiment, which proved that there is an ether that the light has to pass through, and this completely destroys Einstein's theory of relativity that says there is no ether. Now, what was happening going into the space age is they had some big problems to overcome. They were using the Bedford Canal experiment in the 1890s as propaganda in school all the way up to the 1960s. I mean, probably a lot of you, if you went to elementary school, probably in the 50s or 60s, you might remember that. They were still teaching it in textbooks. But that, of course, the Bedford Canal, they, whatever, totally a flat earth thing. But they were twisting it into propaganda, but they needed more, because the problem is that they had not one experiment. Of the dozens I could show you, there was not one experiment that ever showed that the earth is moving. The earth was stationary. Time and again, they kept showing that the ether above moves within the firmament. And so they had to roll out Einstein. It's interesting. I remember when Time magazine came out and named him Person of the Year. That was in 1999. I was a senior in high school. And I remember even back then, I went into Barnes and Noble and I picked that up and I looked at it, and I felt something in my spirit, even back then, like a clincher, like there's something wrong about this. And I know now that was the Holy Spirit speaking to me and trying to, kind of steer me to not believe everything that is being put out there. Now, doesn't Einstein look really good there in a pair of heels? Yeah, I mean, that's some pretty awesome shoes that he's sporting there, crossing his legs. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I'm seeing some heels there. Yeah, he wore them well. And of course, these are some quotes by Albert Einstein. If the facts don't fit the theory, change the facts. Here's another one. Isn't that awful? I mean, this is like a mainstream quote by Einstein. If the facts don't fit the theory, change the facts. Actually sounds like the Bible. You guys know this is my biggest passion, right? Bigger than anything is being obedient to the Father. And a lot of people don't like the facts in there, so they change the facts. It's called cherry picking. This is another quote from Albert Einstein. What we mean by relative motion in a general sense is perfectly plain to everyone. If we think of a wagon moving along the street, we know that it is possible to speak. It is possible to speak of the wagon at rest, and the street is in motion, just as well as it is to speak of the wagon in motion and the street at rest. That, however, is a very special part of the ideas involved in the principle of relativity. So what he's saying here is that if you were on the moon and you're looking at the earth, the moon isn't moving. The moon could be totally stationary. It's actually the earth moving, right? Or you're driving in the car down the highway. You're actually not, you're putting the pedal to the metal. You're actually not driving anywhere. You're totally stationary. It's actually the road that is moving 80 miles an hour underneath you. That's relativity. I mean, that is literally what Albert Einstein is saying. He basically was like, look, we can't prove that the earth is moving. That's the confession right here. They cannot prove that the earth is moving and spinning on its axis per the Copernican revolution. Huge problem. So we're just going to come up with this theory, and boom, we've destroyed the flat earth theory. We've destroyed geocentrism. We've destroyed the Michelson-Morley experiment. All those experiments, all gone. And here's what happened. Here's how it happened. We'll bring in Nikola Tesla here. Before I do, though, there's this man named Professor Herbert Dingle. He was the biggest advocate of relativity. Now, I should also point out with E equals MC squared and all that jazz, there's only maybe a handful, like on my finger, right here. I got 5 fingers. You can see I'm not a Nephilim. I don't have 6. I got 5. Nor am I AI, right? Because, with all the 6-finger AI, there's probably that many people on the earth who could really understand relativity. If even that, nobody can understand. Everyone just assumes it's a reality, a thing, because they all watched my favorite TV show of all time, The Twilight Zone, and every episode shows, the formula drifting through space, through the 4th dimension. So basically, Professor Herbert Dingle is the biggest advocate of relativity. He is like the pit bull. He is set loose by the gatekeepers and the controllers of the world to say, okay, prove this, make a case for it. He spends his life studying relativity. He writes a couple books on it, Relativity for All, that came out in 1922. And then there was another one, the Special Theory of Relativity. I think that one came out in but then in 1959, he uncovered a problem. And he's like, oh, dang, there's something wrong with Einstein's formula. He did something wrong. and we need to solve this. He spent 13 years of his life attempting to solve the problem. He brought on a lot of hired help. Finally, in 1972, he comes out with a book called Science at the Crossroads, and it's readily available. In it, he made the case that relativity was a lie, and that Albert Einstein was a fraud, and that none of it was true. And so this is one of those things that, you know, the way the official narrative works, you guys all see this in the media, where they're not really concerned if you disprove something down the line. The damage has already been done. They've already built so much foundations on it. They just keep moving on and on and on and on and on. There's certain things I can't say because my channel will get taken down, but it's like this with relativity. Relativity is what they needed to launch a spaceship up to the moon and to Mars, which they never did. And it doesn't matter anymore if you disprove relativity, even though that's what they had to go off of, because haven't you seen the moon landing on TV? So it doesn't matter if Albert Einstein is a fraud or not. But again, they have to keep lifting him up. And this is why he is the person of this, not the year, but the century. Albert Einstein was the person of the century for relativity. Getting back to Nikola Tesla. Oh, this is what Professor Herbert Dingle actually said about relativity. He says, in the language of mathematics, we can tell lies as well as truths. And within the scope of mathematics itself, there is no possible way of telling one from the other. What he's saying is that Albert Einstein told the perfect lie. It was a lie that you can't prove or disprove based on his formula. But he saw it. He saw like there was a serious problem here. And he's like, guys, Albert Einstein pulled the wool over all of our, he was clearly a controller. He was brought in to pull the wool over our eyes. He lied to all of us. None of it's true. There is no relativity. Like when you get in your car and you drive, you're literally driving. The road is not driving you. All right. Nikola Tesla had this to say, and this is, of course, he was, in Edison's age, 1890s, early 1900s. Of course, he was at the Chicago World Fair. Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality, which of course is relativity, right? So basically he's saying you could stray away from experiments like the Michelson-Morley, right? Like things that actually prove that there is a solid firmament over us, that the ether is moving, that the earth is stationary. Those are all actual real experiments that you can go out and do. You can go out and prove that water finds its level and that you can see well beyond what you're supposed to see over the curve of the earth, because there is no curve of the earth. But if you go to math, you can prove whatever you want. You can go to math and and this is what NASA is so good at, where they have the perfect math. They will show you the perfect math time and time and time again for all their space stuff. But in terms of just pure experiments, you can't replicate it. You can't show how gases can be contained without a solid structure. That's a big one. Let's see what else I have here. I'm going to end there, and I'm going to actually begin next week with Baseball and the Firmament when I go into the 7 firmaments of heaven. Thank you all for being a part of this tonight. My apologies for, I had several videos that I wanted to show you and talk through. And it was a little jarring for me because I could hear the volume totally fine and you guys couldn't. And so I'm trying to talk over it, over these voices that are talking. Closing out tonight, I'm going to have a message again from my good friend Polly Hart. I asked that everyone just pray to Yah and see if you would like to contribute to this ministry. And like I said, this ministry, the Unexpected Cosmology, has grown way beyond just me. What started out was me is now we are supporting Rebecca. We're supporting Pamela. And of course, Pamela is doing some amazing work with Paleo. We just turned out volume two, the second edition of Bereshith, that'd be Genesis, and she's working on turning out the second edition for the entire Torah, as well as turning out Matthew and other things like that. We'll do this again next week. Love you guys. Thank you for being a part of this. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Hello. My name is Polly Hart. and we are at the smallest church in America, in Townsend, Georgia. And I've got the Bible here, and I'm actually facing the back. That's usually I'd face that way. So I'm going to read to you a verse from the Holy Bible, and I don't know what version this is. This is the NIV, non-inspired version, but it's still okay. We're going to get through it together. I am in Deuteronomy 26, and I'm reading from Deuteronomy because it's very important for me to have you understand where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a place where I grew up knowing this and reading this and understanding this, but I was taught that half of it wasn't true. So I've changed, basically, because my dad made me memorize Psalm chapter 1, which says that if you meditate on the Torah day and night, you'll be like a tree planted by the rivers of water. So now that I believe the Torah and I meditate on it day and night, I actually do the Torah, which is amazing. And I am actually becoming a tree planted by the rivers of water. So Deuteronomy is the basis for everything that Jesus, Yeshua, talked about. He talked mostly from Deuteronomy, Isaiah, and Psalms. Those are just three largest books that he quoted from. So I'm going to quote from Deuteronomy, even though it's a non-inspired version. We're going to go with it, chapter 26. When you have entered the land the Lord your God is giving you, and taken inheritance and taken possession of it and settled in it, take some of the first fruits of all that you produce from their soil, that the land the Lord your God is giving you, and put them in a basket. Then go to the place the Lord your God will choose as dwelling for his name, and say to the priest in the office at the time, I declare today to the Lord your God that I have come to the land the Lord swore to our forefathers to give us. The priest will take the basket from your hands and set it down in front of the altar. Then you shall declare before the Lord your God, my father was wandering, Aramaean, and he went down from Egypt with a few people and lived there, became a great nation, powerful and numerous. But the Egyptians mistreated us and made us to suffer, putting us to hard labor. Then we cried out to the Lord, the God of our forefathers, and the Lord heard our voice, saw our misery, toil, and oppression. So the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and great terror with miraculous signs and wonders. He brought us to this land and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now I bring the first fruits of the soil that you, O Lord, have given me. Place the basket before the Lord your God and bow down before him. And you and the Levites and the aliens among you will rejoice in all the good things the Lord your God has given you and the household. When you have finished, set aside a tenth of all your produce in the third year, the year of your tithe. You shall give it to the Levite, the alien, the fatherless, and the widow, that they may eat in your towns and be satisfied. In your towns, basically because he gave you these towns. These weren't our towns, they were given to us by him. So wherever you find yourself in your land, you know that you were brought there by providence of him who gave them to you. And so what should you do? You should take to the fatherless, the widow, the orphan, the one who is an alien among you, a stranger in your midst, and the Levite, the people who serve, and give it to them. So I found myself aligned with a man called Noel Joshua Hadley, and he's a pretty cool guy. I like him a lot. And his goal is to take care of the widows and the orphans. That's what James, in the book of James, says. What is good religion? That you defile not yourself, and you take care of the widows and the orphans. So Noel is helping us not defile ourselves. If you go to his website, theunexpectedcosmology.com, you can find a lot of resources there to help us not defile ourselves. Secondarily, he is helping the widows. Now, that's not the end of the list. The orphans are next. But right now, we're taking care of two widows. We're helping those two people, as well as him, the minister, as in this case, the Levite. Since we don't have a temple anymore, we have to do what we can to follow Torah as best as we can. So we're taking care of Noel and his family. We're taking care of the widows. And so at theunexpectedcosmology.com, you can find a link, and you can go there, and I'm going to put the link in the description below, to donate to the widows that we're helping. So this month and through the rest of the year, we need your help. We need you to practice what Torah preaches, what Deuteronomy chapter 26, verses 1 through 12 talk about. My name is Polly Hart, and I love people. And this is just another step in me loving people. I'm loving you, I'm giving you the opportunity to obey. I'm loving Noel, and I'm loving the people that he helps. So if you want to go ahead and hop over there right now, otherwise I'm just going to hang out here by myself, and I think I might clean a little bit. It's Saturday night. I worship my Sabbath, my Shabbat is from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset. So I'm going to get it ready for the people who come in here who don't know the Torah fully and think that Sunday is the Sabbath. That's okay. I'm going to love them. I'm going to maybe dust a little bit. There's some spiders I got to get rid of. Anyway, you guys are blessed. Be blessed and not stressed. Bye-bye.